Hey, John.
Oh, Nick, we're here. We're here. Yeah. It's raining here in South Carolina. It's cold
Oh,
here in the library
tell
shed,
me,
but you know,
tell me about the rain, John. We've had, I think, two non-rain days since Christmas. I mean, it's been relentless here. It's a light drizzle, but it just hasn't stopped.
good thing you've got a channel for all that water to flow into. Does it ever
Yeah.
flood there? I mean, does it just drains off into
Well,
the
well, I'm sort of on the side of a hill, so we're okay. All the water sort of floods off down, and at the bottom of the hill is a valley, and at the bottom of the valley is the sea, so we're okay. Further up into the old town, which is sort of built beside a stream, there they get some flooding, but so far it seems okay this year. The quantity hasn't been huge. It just hasn't stopped.
Oh, well, it was 75 degrees here yesterday, Nick. It was spring. The
Wow.
birds were in the trees and everything. I was just like, it's still in the 60s, but it's raining. It's wow. And there's no wind after
No.
15 years in Oklahoma. I'm telling you, I go outside and I think, what's wrong? I'm not being buffeted. Anyway, yeah. So this week, Nick, you did it. You put up that post. You finally pulled the trigger on this thing and put up the ring in the book, and
Yeah.
we it was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Well, I say we spoke about it. You gave sort of an overview of the epigraphs on our. I think it was our like reaction show to the Hallmark Man. We'd both finished it. So it's taken me this long. You said need to read the ring in the book. It's going to be important. Maybe it's the book in the book, and it's taken me this long to read it. There's reasons why it's taken me this long, John. I have a reading list, and I've been
Yeah, it's not like you've been
reluctantly
sitting on your hands.
no, I've been reluctant to shift it forward because my word, it's a difficult read. I'd never really read any kind of poetry, let alone long form poetry, until Aurora Leigh. Now, Aurora Leigh, I have to say, was a joy to read. It is very lyrical. Uh, it's a linear narrative, so it feels more like a novel than a lot of epic poetry does, and it's beautifully written. So I enjoyed reading it. I felt a wonderful sense of achievement when I finished. Yes, there's some difficult words. Yes, I had to look up some historical stuff to try and place it in time. But I had an annotated copy. I had an academic reader's guide, which helped an awful lot. And I really felt like someone was holding my hand as I went through this poem. I've got none of that for the ring in the book. This poem was incredibly popular and incredibly well regarded up until the early years of the 20th century, when it seems to have gone out of fashion. There are academic articles about it. There's no real book length analysis. There's no reader's guides that are available for, Joe Public prices. So, yeah.
There is
so
one. There is.
I was basically reading it raw. Now I have the advantage over old-fashioned people who rely on codexes, because I'm using this. There's a lot of Latin in it. There's classical Latin and there's legal Latin in there, and that was relatively easy for me to highlight the text and then just translate. So it didn't stop me moving forward that much. What I found more of a hindrance was the archaic words that we use, deliberately archaic, because of course he wrote it in the 1860s. He's talking about an incident that happened in the 1690s, so well before his time, and in Italian. So a lot of the words he's chosen are deliberately Italianesque. I can't tell you the number of times I used the electronic dictionary says word not found, I go onto Google and try and discover what this word means. And it'll give the reading, and then it'll say on the OED list, the first known use of this was Robert Browning. Ah, great! He's just made up a word. What?
That's right. Well, neologisms are, the master's, mark. That's
yeah.
I mean, oh,
So
I mean,
and I value my own time enough that I won't really persist with the book if I'm not enjoying it. And I have to say, book one, which is titled The Ring in the Book, it's the opening book, and it's the narrator, who is Robert Browning, using a lot of very rich allusion and allegory, talking about how, wandering in Florence, he found this old yellow book, the discovery of the basically records of this Italian trial, and how he was going to use this and turn it into something beautiful, which is his ring. I didn't enjoy that, and I really struggled to get through it. And I was at the point of, okay, if I get sort of halfway through the next book and I'm feeling the same, I'm just going to, next time I talk to John, I'm going to say, really looking forward to your article on the ring in the book. I'm sure it's going to be valuable. I can't wait. Fortunately, so the next book, the next two books actually are essentially town gossip. It's in a much more narrative style. It's still dense. It's still difficult to understand. It's not something you can flick through. You have to. It's good exercise for the grey cells, but it isn't a relaxing read. But the hate to fun scale was going past halfway, so I felt that was enough for me to continue with it. But we spoke last week, and I'd almost finished it, and I think when we spoke, I'm pretty sure I think it's important, but it takes so much, or it took so much of my capacity to consume it, that I really didn't have that time to reflect and go, oh yeah, oh yeah. And it's only really when I sat down to write out the correspondences, both to the Hallmarked Man and to Aurora Lee, that I went, wow, no, that is, I mean, it's not just a few allusions. That's for Hallmarked Man, it's a pattern. And for Aurora Lee, that's a real response to your wife's poem. And I'm still now, as I've freed up this capacity and I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about more ways in which those two conversations work. But for all that richness and the huge sense of achievement that I've got from reading it, I'm still drawn back to, you made that prediction, and I know you've done some work, John, on the epigraphs and the quantities used in the Hallmarked Man. It's not that obvious. Even now, looking back, looking at your list, I can't say, oh yeah, the ring in the book, that's the one. How did you come up with that?
All right. Well, before we jump into what I did in September last year, I've done nothing except since then on this subject, other than to say, Nick, go ahead and read the book. Look at this, because you read Aurora Lee and it was great. I was like, wow, he's found this thing in my heart. It opens it up. So do the ring in the book, Nick. Go ahead. I was busy moving my wife and everything across the country, but really, I need to go. If you haven't read Nick's piece on The Ring in the Book and its importance for understanding Hallmarked man and really Rowling's Artistry and Meaning, cut off this thing and go read it. The link is right down below. You're going to find that and go read that. And after that, I'd done a tally of all the epigraphs, and I posted that as the first comment on there so you could see what Nick was talking about. He referenced that. And the chart that's in the ring chart it's in Nick's thing where he wrote to me and said, I don't see a ring in this.
And there needs to be.
And I haven't read the book. I haven't read the book, and I look forward to it because what you're describing is really exactly the kind of reading exercise that everyone should crave, where every line is rich. I'm afraid just from spending so much time on the internet, you just start to F-scan everything. And so when you read a real text where the author is choosing every word with deliberation, it seems, it's almost painful at first, but then as your mind wakes up to it, it's the density that you can experience something of what 19th century readers who loved this work. Anyway, and so Nick, you give us that invitation, and as much as we like Hallmarked Man and Rowling's work, we should, read this book, which he's clearly pointing to. To your point, is he clearly pointing to it? I thought, well, I just have to go back and find my notes about all the epigraphs. I mean, there's 139 epigraphs. The frontispiece one by Browning. Then you have the 11 parts. The 10 parts in the epilogue are all from John Oxenham's Maid of the Silver Sea. And then you have 127 chapters with 5 different authors in them. 139 epigraphs. And so I thought, well, I have to go find those notes from the thing I said in that first conversation and do this. And of course, in between Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and Belton, South Carolina, those notes have been lost forever. And I thought, well, that's easy. I'll just reproduce those. And so last night, I went back and I did the grunt work and reproduced that grunt work. All right, silly me. If that's the worst casualty of my move, that's great. And it was a revelation again. You get, of those 139 epigraphs, you'd think, in a way, because Oxenham has all the lead of the parts and he gets included in the book, that he'd be the one that with the most. But really, he has 27 epigraphs. That's a lot. But Browning has more. Browning's got 38, 39, depending on how you count them, and from 32 poems. Matthew Arnold only has 17 poems, 25 epigraphs. 6 are from Merope, A Tragedy. That's a lot. Hausman, 5 works, 25 poems, 28 epigraphs. Most of them are from last poems with 10 epigraphs, which wasn't, of course, it wasn't actually the last poems that he published when he was alive. And then we get 2 more collections, additional poems, more poems. And then we get Pike. Rowling says that he has 3 works. There's really only 2. There's the Liturgy of the Ancient Accepted Rite, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and then there's Morals and Dogmas of the Ancient Accepted Rite of Scottish Freemasonry. She actually has another one that says the Ancient Accepted Rite of Scottish Freemasonry, which I don't think is a book. I think it should have been included with Morals and Dogmas. Well, that you get 16 epigraphs from Morals and Dogma out of 22 epigraphs. Okay. So there's no clear majority, but Browning has the great plurality with almost 40 out of 140. So why did I say the ring in the book? Because the ring in the book, first of all, is never mentioned.
No.
It's never alluded to in the epigraphs. She chooses she gives the epigraph titles the title of the chapter or the book within the book of the ring in the book. And so we get, Count Guido, we get Tertium Quid, we get Pompilia, Dominus Hyacinthus. We get five of the books, and we get 6 epigraphs from it, which you'd be thinking, well, that isn't that much, half Rome. If you didn't know the ring in the book, you'd never know it was there.
Yeah.
But freakishly, I think I've told the story too many times.
Yeah.
A professor that I revered said that Robert Browning was one of only 2 poets worth reading, Propertius and The Ring in the Book. I mean, Propertius and Robert Browning. And he had a memorized knowledge of Propertius, which is, again, just had me standing there like, wow, I stand in the company of giants. And so I saw this book at a book sale once, The Ring in the Book by Robert Browning. Well, it was a book that had a ring in the title by this author, and so I picked it up. It was in a slip, sleeve. Oh, this is great. Never read it, but when I saw all these epigraphs from Browning, I went to my shelf. I have one of those books that has the best of, annotated with notes and things about Robert Browning, and it had a lot of the poems that Rowling refers to, including the one that's the frontispiece, which is clearly, especially on the model of Cuckoo's Calling, that frontispiece poem, you really want to look at that very closely. But I noticed in that anthology that a lot of these were the poems titles were actually chapters or books within The Ring in the Book, and I pulled my thing down, and there they were. I mean, 5 of the 6 epigraphs had things in from The Ring in the Book. So really, Merope has as many, by Arnold, has as many references as The Ring in the Book. And yet I never thought of it as a likely model of it. I need to go back and look at it. I have a copy of it. I bought a copy of it, but I haven't read it to look for this. One more thing for you to read, Nick. But there's 4 things. The frontispiece is from Browning. He has the plurality of epigraphs. Okay. There's the fact that it was hidden, that she never actually mentioned it. That gave it an extra bit of juice.
Yeah.
And then there's the fact that we had the Aurora Leigh confirmation, that Rowling said that she used Aurora Leigh. And then this was before you had actually done your reading of Aurora Leigh. But just the fact that it was Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Browning. I've seen them linked at the museum, basically, to Romantic poets at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. And they're an incredible museum. It's a magnificent building. Georgian architecture, of course. And that made me think, oh, this must be it. This has got to be it. Now, I'm looking at it now, and I'm thinking, well, how about Albert Pike? He's got, pretty much all his epigraphs are from this thing on Freemasonry, but it's not a story, so that couldn't be a model. The Houseman epigraphs, many times, as we've been going through in the paid subscriber ring charting, really the Matthew Arnold and the A.E. Houseman poems have been the richest ones, really the most meaningful. Browning has his real moments, but Matthew Arnold a couple of times would just talks about, we all have the same heart type thing. You're just like, oh, okay, this is what Rowling's really after. And I say that because it's what she did in Deathly Hallows with the William Penn quotation. We have the whole inner light, theology, anthropology in that. And then there's Oxenham. He's got 27 epigraphs from the same book.
Yeah.
Now, I'd read The Maid in the Silver Sea. And when I was going through the book, I was like, this is not The Maid in the Silver Sea. There isn't that kind of love story. There isn't that kind of, the adventure, her saving him type thing. I mean, it just wasn't there. And so I put it off. Now, having done the close reading of part 7, where we get Sark and what happens, in the old forge at Sark, which 4 of us, 4 chiastic all-stars have said that's it. That makes that 5, 6, 7 part turn complete. You see the parallels between 5 and 7, but that chapter at Sark is pretty much this what sums up the whole book experience. It's alchemical, it's mythological, it's it's all there. I think she chose that book to say it's all going to come to a head on Sark. Pay attention to what happens on Sark. But Louise Freeman Davis is, her website is the home of Oxingham Studies. It has not only the Maid of the Silver Sea, but other books that she's written, and I'm sure she's written something about, its relevance to Hallmark Man besides that trip. I trust you, Nick, to go look that up and find out what Louise has said about all that stuff. But yeah, I look back on it. Those four things: the frontispiece, the plurality of the numbers, the hidden nature of it, and the connection with Aurora Lee, which you've made even stronger. I think that's why I said that's got to be it. Would I be embarrassed if it hadn't planned out? Yeah, I would have been blushing because I said it was such arrogant confidence. But there it was. Thank you. Now back to you, the real work. This is like the spotter versus the shooter, Nick. We're gonna come back to this thing here, but the spotter doesn't really have a very hard job. It's like it's over there, and the shooter actually has to take the breath and pull the trigger, and you did that. What struck me while reading your post was in the correspondences that you found between Ringing the Book and Hallmark Man. Give us the highlights of that, because that is such a wow.
Okay, I think first, the sort of potted story. So this is not a spoiler. So people that want to go out there and read the Ring and the Book, you get the plot in various versions very early on. So there really isn't a spoiler, but this is the story. So it's centered around Count Guido Franceschini. Now, he's an aristocratic Italian from small town Italy, a place called Arezzo. His family's come upon hard times, although in sort of his grandfather's time they were fairly well to do and well considered. He's tried his luck in Rome, working at sort of one remove from the church for some period of time. He's middle-aged now, and he's basically gained nothing from it. His younger brother, Paul, is quite high up in the church, and he and his brother connive to get Guido married to a beautiful teenager called Pompilia Comparini. I say teenager. She's a child. She's 13 at the point of the engagement. It's a transactional arrangement. The Comparinis are middle class, so they're not aristocratic, not exactly wealthy, but they are well-to-do. They are very comfortable. Thank you very much. And the transaction is Guido will marry Pompilia, and Pompilia, together with her parents, will move from Rome to Arezzo. They will live with Guido. They will gain the reflected luster of the noble in-laws, and Guido basically will have their money and their daughter. So there's a dowry involved, and obviously if Pompilia has a child, then the child will be the heir to the Franceschini name, and her parents' money will then devolve upon the child. It all goes wrong. So the Comparinis discover, as soon as they arrive in Arezzo, that Guido's plan basically is to either drive off or kill the parents. So he has their money, he doesn't need them, he's got no interest whatsoever in raising their social status. He starves them, he abuses them, and they eventually run away back to Rome, penniless. So they are going to go back to Rome and beg from door to door for bread, better than staying with Guido. And they abandon their daughter. with a heavy heart, but they abandon their daughter. Now we get the first bombshell. The bombshell is Pompilia is not the daughter of the parents. So her parents, Pietro and Violante, are not her parents. Violante, who doesn't seem like a really nice person, was postmenopausal. So they're an older couple. They had no heir. And if they didn't have an heir, then the money that Pietro had gained in his lifetime were going to go to a further branch of the family. And Violante wanted to give Pietro a gift, so she pretended she was pregnant. But actually what she'd done is she'd made a bargain with a prostitute to take the prostitute's child and pretend it was her child. Pietro had no idea about this. But then, 14 years later, they find themselves impoverished in Rome because the dowry is now given to Guido because they married their daughter, but it's not their daughter, so they go to law and say, this is not our daughter. We want our dowry back. This, of course, enrages Guido, surprises Pompilia, I'm quite sure, and there is a lawsuit between the parents and Guido. It seems that Italian law always tries to find the middle course, and the middle course, Guido says, well, if this is not the woman that I married with the dowry, then my marriage isn't a marriage. And the law says, no, it is still a marriage because you married that person, and that person is still that person. The dowry was given for the daughter, but it's not a daughter, so the dowry goes back to the parents. Guido, who's never treated Pompilia particularly well, now treats her to the point of monstrosity. So physically abusive, sexually abusive. There is a suggestion that his brother, the priest, also sexually abuses Pompilia. And Guido comes up with a plan. The plan is he's going to entice Pompilia to run away when he can chase after her and legally kill her and the lover as a spited husband. So he writes letters to a young cleric in Arezzo, pretending to be from Pompilia, begging this young man to come and save her. And he writes letters supposed to be from the young cleric Giuseppe Caponsacchi to Pompilia. So he forges two sets of correspondence, sends one to the cleric, to Giuseppe, the other one to Pompilia. Neither of them believe that this is a genuine correspondence for any appreciable point of time, but it becomes clear to Giuseppe that Pompilia is in mortal danger. Eventually rescues Pompilia. They fly to Rome. Giuseppe pursues them, and his intention is to kill the pair of them there and then. But Giuseppe disguises himself. So he takes off his clerical uniform and dons the dress of a cavalier, arms himself with a sword just for the look of the thing. When Guido discovers them, he sees an armed man instead of a helpless, unarmed cleric, and basically chickens, and calls for the law instead of killing the pair of them. Giuseppe and Pompilia are arrested. Guido searches the carriage and the room that Pompilia was resting in when he catches them, and discovers the correspondence that he's been forging all along. And it goes to court. Italian law finds the middle way again, and the court decides that Giuseppe was a very naughty vicar. He's going to be exiled for a few years, but nothing really terrible is going to happen to him. Pompilia has run away, but she did feel she was in mortal peril. She's going to be put away in a nunnery so that she can live in peace, but away from the temptations of the world. Guido won't get his dowry, but he will not be prosecuted. Guido is further enraged because now the gossips are saying that his wife has run away with a lover and there's nothing he can do about it. He gets 4 of his henchmen, people who work on the estate. They travel.
There we go.
Yeah, they travel to Rome. Meanwhile, Pompilia has given birth to Guido's heir. She's released from the convent to the custody, house arrest of her parents. So they're very happy, actually. They've got their daughter back. She's given birth to a child. Guido rushes in and kills the parents and kills Pompilia, except he doesn't. Pompilia is mortally wounded, but she's survived just long enough to give her dying testimony against Guido. And that's the story. So the correspondences. So again, just looking at it.
What happens to Guido? You got to finish. Oh, come on.
Okay, so Guido
Guido's
is
convicted, and this is
Guido is arrested. He mounts defense, and Italian law at that stage. There's several defenses he can use, but the key one is it is not murder if it is righteous retribution, and that's essentially the tack that he tries. He's undermined by some of the obvious forgeries. So it's said in one of the lawyers, are we to believe that Pompilia, who could neither read nor write, wrote letters to her lover, who responded with letters to a girl who couldn't read? So, and Guido shoots himself in the foot as well because he is tortured, which is a normal thing in jurisprudence in Italian law. In a lot of post-Roman law, torture was a regular feature. So he's put on the rack, and at some point he confesses that one of the first letters that he forges is a letter from Pompilia to her parents after they've escaped from Arezzo, saying, good riddance, I'm very happy with my husband, he looks after me, and all of that. Basically, he confesses to writing this finely in pencil and getting Pompilia to draw over the outside of it, but it's what she would have wanted to have said anyway. But he doesn't do a good job. He appears to hire a jackass as his lawyer as well. Of the only few real comic moments are the testimony of the 2 lawyers, neither of whom really take themselves that seriously. And certainly the lawyer for the defense wasn't very, very competent. He's found guilty by the tribunal. The last throw of the dice, and it's the reason why his defense lawyer really didn't put much time into it, was it appears that Guido has some form of clerical orders, not as a full priest, but enough that he can claim clerical immunity from the normal Italian justice. So it goes to the Pope. The Pope, in really, again, really very, very dense, but quite beautifully moving exploration of guilt, innocence, forgiveness, and morality in the Pope's testimony, comes to the unavoidable conclusion that it is both right Christian and important for the Pope's eternal soul that he confirms the death sentence against Guido. Guido therefore is condemned to, because he's a nobleman, he's not going to be hung. His head is going to be separated from his body, and it's a little unclear in the text. They talk about a machine that is going to do this job. Now, this was before the guillotine was in certainly common use in France, and I don't think really it was ever used in Italy. So I'm not sure if that's a poetic term, but they talk about a machine to remove Guido's head. Guido has his final testimony, which is a plea the day before he dies for anyone to save his life. He goes a little bit mad, understandably, I think, towards the end, and that is the end of Guido. But just reading out the story and knowing, particularly the Iron Bridge plots, there's a lot of different plots going on through the Hallmark Man, but the central one is the Ian Chloe Griffiths with Tyler Powell plot. There's some obvious correspondences. So if we take Chloe or Jolanda as Pompilia, it's a daughter who isn't really a daughter. So to the town of Ironbridge, everyone knows her as Chloe Griffiths, the daughter of Ian Griffiths. That is not who she is. Pompilia isn't the daughter of the Comparinis, even though that's who everyone knows she is. Chloe is entrapped or captured when still a child. I think even at the date, 13 was considered extremely young. I mean, this is at that time and age that I think that would be prepubescent. I think she's a child.
Whoa. This is a homogeneously Catholic country, and the Virgin Mary was 13 or 14. So really the critical date there is menarche. Has she begun menstruation? And if she had, then that's fair. In the 17th century, that's fair game.
Yeah, I think
I'm not advocating this.
No,
please.
No.
Keep your letters there, but that doesn't seem outrageous to me.
Certainly, in the poem, she is called a child, as opposed to a woman. So, and also, beast though Guido is, certainly from Pompilia's testimony, it seems like he waited several years before he engaged in a sexual relationship with Pompilia. So no, I think it's fair to say she was a child. But having said that, Guido is a violent and sadistic sexual predator. I mean, there is nothing nice about Guido. He's monstrous, but he is also charismatic. So it's clear that he can sway popular opinion. So the first two books are half Rome and the other half of Rome, about the gossip that is spreading. Essentially, the half Rome is all of the people that Guido has swayed. So they are convinced he is a deeply wronged husband. He's been tricked by this family. The parents have run away with the money that was promised to Guido. The wife has run away with a lover after committing her life to Guido. This is a deeply wronged man, and he is the person that has created that story using forged communications. So just like Ian Griffiths forges Chloe's report when she's supposed to be interrailing around Europe, and Tyler's messages to his gran, Guido has done that with these false messages, both from Pompilia to her parents and supposedly between Pompilia and Giuseppe. He acts with a gang, so just like the Iron Bridge gang that meet their comeuppance at the end, he has his rough and readies to act with him. And I think most clearly for me, I think Pompilia and Giuseppe, Tyler Powell is Giuseppe Caponsacchi, the young priest. He's a very moral character. He has this idea to run away with Pompilia. I was going to say Chloe, to run away with Pompilia. not for any carnal desire, although they do talk, both Pompilia and Giuseppe talk about love, but it's clear it is, if not platonic, then an ant-erotic love. They are not interested sexually in each other, but they recognize the virtue of each other. He is the archetypal rescuer, and Tyler Powell, although he wasn't the brightest spark in the engine, he wanted to rescue Chloe. You know, he wanted to create a life for Chloe and the unborn child.
Was Pompilia pregnant when she was killed?
No, so Pompilia gave birth. It's one of the things that she thanks God for, is she had given birth and the child was taken away partly for his own safety, partly for again, she was very young when she gave birth, but for a wet nurse. And they knew that Guido was looking for the child, and they thought if they separated the child and the mother, it would make his job more difficult. Thankfully, because of course she was mortally wounded and the child is okay. But really her dying plea, she says she forgives Guido. All of that is done. I forgive him, but he can go with my blessing. He can go, but please make sure my child is going to be okay. Wow. Anyway, the quantities and the number of the correspondences, the echoes in the plot, for me is absolutely clear that this was a framework. This was a scaffold that Rowling used to create the Iron Bridge plot. Absolutely no doubt in my mind whatsoever. Have we seen that before?
Has Rowling-Galbraith used her epigraphs to point to the template of her story?
Yeah.
Boy, you know, her first use of epigraphs come in Deathly Hallows, which she says epitomize, kind of improper use of the word, but epitomize the meaning of the entire series. And those two epigraphs are from Aeschylus, from the Oresteia, and from William Penn, Fruits of Solitude. And sure enough, I've written a lot about those two epigraphs, Nick, and she's right that you can't. I mean, and she said, I think she had those in mind from Chamber of Secrets forward, as if she had those, if those epigraphs still worked when she was writing Deathly Hallows, then she was on track. If she everything was exactly the way she wanted it to end. Well, the quote from Aeschylus is about the three children in the Oresteia, you know, and their revenge. And it's like, okay, well, there's a large part of the mythological template of Harry Potter. You know, Orestes has a scar. You know, it's just like, I mean, it's there he is, and so she's pointing to that template. More important, I think that William Penn is actually more important because it points to her, you know, the meaning of the story, because it gives you the whole inner light cosmology, anthropology, soteriology of you know, the Friends, who are the Quakers, the Society of Friends, that really informs. It's the Coleridgean thing that informs all of this logos epistemology we talk about all the time here. So those two epigraphs were really rich and dense, and she was saying they were important. So yeah, okay. It's not quite a point-to-point correspondence, but with Orestes, she's saying, hey, there's a lot of mythological freight here. Check that out. But okay, when you go through the strike novels, you're going to see better examples of that than you got. Of course, there's no epigraphs for the Ichabod. There's no epigraphs for Christmas Pig. There's no epigraphs to speak of for Casual Vacancy, you know, unless you include that manual from the government. So, and there's no epigraphs for the Fantastic Beasts series, or Cursed Child. You know, if we're just, you know, it's just stripped until we get to Cuckoo's Calling. Cuckoo's Calling, you know, Nick, how many epigraphs are there in Hallmark, man? Do you remember the number there?
100 and
139.
39.
139.
Wow.
Okay. And Cuckoo's Calling has, depending how you count, 8 or 9. If you can count that last Tennyson poem as the closing bracket to the Rossetti dirge at the start, then you have 9. But 8 or 9, wow, we're well shy of 130 plus, right?
Yeah.
But then you get Silkworm. And there you don't have parts, you just have chapters. Though you can break that down into parts, and I'm happy to do that if anybody wants me to want to do a charting of Silkworm. Beatrice Gross has done this work. You know, the White Devil and the Revenger's Tragedy, even Hamlet, gives us really important clues about the Silkworm. And I'll put the links down below to Beatrice's work. I mean, I'm not going to touch that. It's really great. So, people here don't know that Beatrice she's got a fellowship to teach early modern drama, which is largely revenge tragedies at Oxford. You know, so hey, I'm not going to touch that one. I think I did. I posted something about, here's the book I think is the one inside there. And then I found that Beatrice had already posted something on MuggleNet. You know, it's like, oh, great, that's pretty embarrassing. You know, all right. But then so you got the Silkworm, and then you get Rosmere's Home. Rosmere's Home. You know, I'll put the links down below about that. Yeah. You know, that there's this incestuous backdrop informed the murder of Lethal White. Then you get Fairy Queen in Troubled Blood, and the Janus Deceiver should have been a giveaway. Yeah, the deceiver inside Fairy Queen should have been a giveaway about the poisoner in Troubled Blood, whose name is, you know, sounds exactly the same as Janus, Janus, and she, you know, and she's hidden there. And as Rowling confirmed, and you demonstrated, Nick, Aurora Lee is the working model for Ink Black Heart. I think the closest Rowling epigraph suggestions to story template was in the Rossetti poem that opens Cuckoo's Calling, and the Escos epigraph in Deathly Hallows. But we are seeing, you know, something like templates in the backdrop for 4 of the 8 books we have in hand, which is that's a good number. That's a good number. What has Rowling said though about her epigraph sources? I mean, do they precede the novels, you know, or follow the writing? I mean, does she have the epigraph at the top of her page when she starts to write these chapters and parts, or does she, you know, follow the writing and go, oh, this would be a good one, you know?
So, well, the question was asked on Twitter, and as always on Twitter, no matter how excellent the question, the answer can just sort of sidestep it a little bit. So this was a guy called Christopher Philp who asked, when you plan the books, do you plan them around quotes that you already know that fit, or do you find quotes that fit the chapter but still have an overarching connection? Now, for me, reading that question, working as I do with you, John, for me, the key bit is that last bit of the sentence. So he's asking, do you have a set of quotes and then write your chapters for the quotes, or do you write the chapters and then find the quote but still have an overarching connection? She answers the latter. I write the chapter first, then try and find the apposite epigraph. The Hallmark man has 5 different sources of epigraphs. I think the Ink Black Heart had the most authors, but all were female poets of the Victorian era. Doesn't really address that last bit at all. So she says, no, I write the chapter, then I look for the epigraph. But from where? So, you know, when she's writing The Running Grave, she writes the chapter, and then she looks in the I Ching, and she finds out where the correct quote from the I Ching is. She doesn't go, well, where in the human history of writing can I find something that would fit that chapter? She goes, this is the source that I'm going to use for the epigraphs. So she hasn't said, but essentially it's a bit of both. It seems to be when she's when on the early stages of working from a project, she knows what her epigraphic sources are going to be, and for those books that have blown many people's minds, as Beatrice Grove says, when she wrote Lethal White, never has a work in English been so epigraphically indebted to a single work. It's never been done before. So she has decided for Lethal White, for Troubled Blood, to say, I'm going to get all of my epigraphs from this work because this work is really important to what I'm writing. So I think she says that these are my selections for this work, and then when she writes a chapter, she finds the right bit of text to quote, a little bit of both. But I was disappointed that Rowling didn't really engage with that. Remains with the overarching thing. What are you trying to do when you make that bold choice of saying, no, this relatively short play in Lethal White, Rosmerholm, this relatively short play, I need to get all of my, or even just I want to get all of my epigraphs for each chapter from that book. Why? What is overarching about that story that means that has to be your source for it?
All right, so
okay.
So what I'm hearing, Nick, is it's not one or the other, it's both. She has a template in mind, and if the source doesn't have sufficient quotable pieces to serve as epigraphs for the whole book, she uses other sources from the genre and play or that highlight her central theme. I mean, we see in Silkworm, the whole thing is about revenge tragedies, and she's really into the Revenger's tragedy and the White Devil, but there's not enough for that whole thing, so she's going to use other stuff. Maybe to disguise it a little bit, but also because there's just not enough from that one play. It'd be too much of a lean, or two plays. And then we have the Gray's Anatomy heart epigraphs in tandem with the hardy women Victorian poets and in Black Heart. She's combining them. And Aurora Leigh is only 13% of the epigraphs in the whole book. So that was pretty well disguised. But Nick, incredibly, you weaseled a confirmation out of the author, so no one can dispute that anymore. That's great. I mean, hats off to you. What gets me is the shift in importance. We see, as I've already said, Cuckoo has 9 epigraphs. Now it's every part and a frontispiece, and every chapter gets an epigraph. And some of these things are just really remarkable. I mean, the Houseman and the Arnold, the Oxenham stuff is pretty pedestrian. It's always like, well, here's another silver quotation or whatever, right? But really, the Browning, the Arnold, the Houseman, those are dense. And the Pike stuff is also worthy of reflection. I think only the Pike book appears obliquely in the text itself. You get references to glosses and guides to Freemasonry, and Pike gets a shout out. But other than that, all the other poets are chosen because of the appropriateness of the fit, and we get to see a jump not only in the quantity of epigraphs, but Team Rowling is pushing readers to think more seriously about them. They're posting reviews of the epigraphs in each book, drawing the dot-to-dot correspondences between the authors and play and the part that they had. That was this last year, right? They put up all these posts about the epigraphs. I don't think Rowling wrote those. Do you?
No.
No. They're kind of like they could be AI generated, but they're but still it's at RobertGalbraith.com or whatever. So it's official. I look at all of these things, and there's one of the books, Nick, that some people really love. I've lost friends over this, Nick. I was told what a terrible person I was for saying that you couldn't possibly be a thinking person and think Career of Evil is the best book. And the people who had that as their conviction, that Career of Evil was the best strike novel ever, really took offense. All right, but there's a curiosity. I'll admit there's a curious thing about Career of Evil, and that is its lyrics. It's epigraphs, which are Blue Oyster Cult lyrics. Now here we have an American rock band. Yeah. Oh well, I'm going to defer to you on this. You told me you're reading a book about Blue Oyster Cult, so I'm going to defer to you in this, despite my great fondness for heavy metal bands with sci-fi themed lyrics. I'm going to just pass off on this.
I share your passion for heavy metal, John. But I have a book, and it's sort of a band biography, stroke discography. I knew nothing of the Blue Oyster Cult at all. The only place I knew them from is from Robert Galbraith. But so I had this book just to try and keep up with the kids. It's a really interesting book. It's by a gentleman called Martin Popov, who was a pop journalist and friend of the band. If there's a moral of the story of Blue Oyster Cult, it is don't do drugs, kids. A message that I heartily endorse. It's the story of a band that came so close to making it big but never really did, which is interesting in itself. We hear of the bands that never got close. We hear all the time of the bands that make it big. Blue Oyster Cult were successful. They made a living. They never got rich, but they never really made it big. I think they had one genuine hit. Not that they were one-hit wonders. They made a lot of music, but they had really only one genuine hit. And all of their real fans, the people that really follow the Blue Oyster Cult, that one hit was a sellout, and they hate it. It's too commercial. But it is a fascinating read. It's clear, and this isn't a book of lyrics, so I need to do some further study. But it's clear that a lot of their songs do follow a narrative. It's also clear that fans and some of the songwriters have also subscribed to this theory that a lot of their songs have an overarching story arc as well across albums that I think might be fun to map. That yes, there may be something in there. So I'm going to go back to that. I really didn't read it, with an idea that it could in any way be a template for the story of Career of Evil. I mean, a lot of their lyrics are pretty bloodthirsty, so I've got to say that's possible. But I'll go back through that and see if I can make a connection. I do know as well, people who are researching this need to be cautious because there's a lot of misinformation as well on the internet. There was an urban legend about the source of the mistress of the salmon salts. And this legend was about the murder of Coast Guard men in New York. That appears to be entirely spurious, just a made up internet story. So need to be a bit cautious, but I'll dig into them. But I mean, the other thing we need to be cautious of, although there's still a lot work to be done on the back catalogue, to use a music phrase, we have a new album coming up, don't we? So sleep tight, Evangeline. We've been told, I've been shouting from the rooftops that this title has come from a 2014 song by a small-time American blues band called the Whiskey Shambles. Now, some people seem to be embracing that. Other people are skeptical, and it's understandable because when I talk about the Blue Oyster Cult never making it big, I mean, these guys are a small band, Don't they're not
This
playing
is a
they're not playing to stadiums. They're playing to bars. This is a small band, but their Sleep Tight Evangeline is a genuine original from them. It's been suggested that it's merely coincidence. So Sleep Tight Evangeline just so happens that it was uses this song title. Rowling discovered their prior use of it, hence the reason why they trademarked it. So they may have got permission. I find it difficult to believe that such a specific phrase as "Sleep Tight Evangeline" can be used but as a song title and this book title without any prior knowledge between the two. I tried, as soon as I searched, and I was really within a minute of Rowling tweeting, I had performed that search. So a closed quotation search for Sleep Tight, Evangeline, and there was the Whiskey Shambles song. I've redone the search, substituting the name Evangeline for 20 or 30 other old-fashioned girls' names, most of them beginning in vowels, ending in vowels. And there are no hits. So there are no songs, no books, no movies. And because I do such a specific search, it'll find anywhere on the internet that has got that phrase that's on a searchable web page. So I find hits of it being used, but it's people mourning the loss of their pets almost exclusively. So yeah, I find it a stretch that's merely
the coincidence possibility to me is, I don't even know why you suggest that, because you tweeted that within moments. It really, it seemed like seconds of Rowling's revelation of the thing, and a person who was there at the meeting with Rowling said, "Great spotting, Nick." Which to me,
they're nice people. So even if I think Rowling shared nothing about the Whiskey Shambles, they are the kind of people that if somebody makes a discovery like that, they will go. So I'm not taking that as definitive, but yeah, absolutely. They didn't go immediately, "Nah, you're crazy."
That's right. Or just silence you.
Yes.
I mean, this is Bill and the Friends of Bill from Strike Fans, and not like the Friends of Bill at AA, but anyway, or Bill Clinton, but anyway, Friends of Bill, and either they have are just wonderfully honorable people, as I'm sure they are, or they've signed non-disclosure agreements because they haven't said a word about that meeting, right? No pictures, nothing like, wasn't that swell, but that's about as far as they go in conversations with each other. And that's great. But the fact that one of them broke ranks and said, "Well spotted, Nick," means to me that that's what Rowling said. It's from this band. And anyway, but that link to me reminds me of Running Grave, and the lead up to Running Grave, where we got the hint that it was Dylan Thomas. Whoa, that was a big. I got pictures of the lake in the shed on Dylan Thomas's property. I went full dive into that. The university from which I got my PhD is largely driven by Dylan Thomas studies, because Swansea was his home base in Wales. So I mean, it was I was very excited about that. And what did we get, Nick? We got nothing. We got the title.
We got not a lot. So
the title was actually in the book. There was a reference to another Running Grave work that wasn't Dylan Thomas. So it was a great, shift, because all the epigraphs were from the I Ching. Now that was a stunner, and the I Ching is really kind of a, it is almost a standalone among Rolling Epigraph sources. It is very, very unusual. But I'm thinking that Slave Tide Evangeline, because this rock band in Cincinnati, Ohio, isn't even a band anymore, really. I mean, they haven't put out an album in more than 10 years. They've changed from being a band to a duo in what they're doing. This album they put out last November was just recordings they had made in various places, various reasons, and they slapped that title on it. I don't think there's any doubt that this was their response to, finding out that the most famous and important author alive today, as I've written about, has chosen one of their lyrics, one of their songs as the title for a book. Going through what little is available of their lyrics online. I mean, the lyrics for that one song, that may be good. That may be something that they use. Maybe that'll be the frontispiece. Who knows? But I'm just saying that I can't see that it's stretching to however long this book is. I mean, can you see 139 epigraphs coming off that book?
It's going to be a lot of work for someone because they're going to have to either electronically transcribe or hand transcribe because there is no log of all these lyrics. I'm sure the band has them written down somewhere, but they are not on the internet. So unless someone is going to transcribe all these lyrics, it's going to be a chore for Rowling to select them as even part epigraphs, let alone chapter epigraphs.
Really, I think that we talked about this with Dimitra Fimi. Evangeline, the poem, Longfellow's poem, is such a better candidate for this than that group. So if it's not going to be the Psalter, that's my first choice. Please let it be the Psalter. I mean, that's what an incredible source for epigraphs Rowling could have there, and we have that charm to suggest that's a real possibility. That's great. And people are doing great things with that. Psalm 58 from the True Book on Taoist thing. Go to the comment thread at the Substack site. I mean, it's wow, great stuff there. But there is one other book, Nick. There's the I Ching is alone. It's not a book you can use as a story template as such because the I Ching is a divination tool or a means to reflection. And I think Rowling was really going for that inside that book, was that she was trying to say, this is what Strike needs to be about. This is Strike's strength, is doing this super conscious type reflection. That's his real, capacity for insight to, who done it, is this cardiac intelligence that he has. And the I Ching is that as a backdrop, because when you read the I Ching, if you're reading it as a discursive argument, you're lost. There's simply there's nothing there for you. You have to pull back and think about it with a different mind than your left and right lobes. The only thing like that, Nick, is Pike's Morals and Dogmas, the Freemasonry Encyclopedia. Is that sort of like the I Ching? I mean, it's another outlier, at least. I mean,
yes, it is, and I would maybe put with that the local government handbook from the casual vacancy, and I would love Rowling to talk about really meaningfully why she's chosen Morals and Dogma and Local Government Handbook. I think they would both fascinate her because she's fascinated by patterns and rules and logic, and I think it would be an interesting read to her. We've seen, not on her main bookshelves, but one of her subsidiary photographs had a photograph, and there were books behind her, and she had a book on the Orange Order from Northern Ireland, which is sort of a quasi-Masonic fraternal organization. I think that would have a similar appeal to her, but it doesn't really answer the question of why they and the I Ching were so important for her work that she had to have that degree of epigraphic indebtedness. The Running Grave, I love. I think it's still my favorite of her books, but that's, for me, that's a shifting target that moves around all the time. But Running Grave is a great, enjoyable read. I think it's an important book, but I'm still not really sure what value the I Ching gives to it. The only place really the I Ching appears within the work itself is from Mazu, and she consciously and completely openly misuses the I Ching. She misses the point entirely of why the I Ching exists, how it's used, and the importance and relevance of it.
Yeah, if she were using that tool as a mirror, the way it's supposed to be, as a point of reflection, she would see that she's a monster.
Yes.
But she doesn't have that capacity. But I think Rowling is one, pointing to that. But in this book within the book, I think she's suggesting that's the way her books need to be read. Now, I why would I think that, Nick? Because that's what we do here. I mean, that's what we're about here, is to go after the anagogical reading and the, with the alchemy and the structure and all those things.
Yeah.
And the mythology. You don't get those depths unless you're stepping back and seeing the books as a point of reflection.
Yeah.
Not just on a moral level, but on a, what does it mean to be human? What and how do we best lead a human life? I mean, the agonies of the soul and spirit in the Ellicott strike relationship can't just be a titillating romance and you're just like, oh, will they or won't they type thing. Or it can be wow, am I leading my life correctly? Am I oriented towards the things that really matter? Am I even using those faculties that I have as a human being in a way that isn't, like using a Fabergé egg as a doorstop? That's really what we're at. And I think that I Ching thing is, I think Troubled Blood is the best thing she ever wrote.
Yeah.
Probably because the epigraphical thing there was such a standout, and all the transformations begin there. I'm a real Troubled Blood fan. But if I go to number 2 on the list of the best strike novels, Running Grave is a wonder. I mean, I dedicated 4 or 5 months of my life to that, just to chart the doggone thing, and it was worth it. It was worth it. It rewarded every minute put into it. And I think if I went back to it today, there's more than a handful of things at the bottom of that bag, Nick. I mean, there's a lot left in that bag. So, I mean, again, it was the 7th of what was a 7-book set, and now we're in this 3-book, coda. This summary and climax, really, of the books. But we had the 7 books set up as really an integer. It's a tight ring with all the pieces working inside that thing. And now I have these last 3 books. We're introduced really with Hallmarked Man, and we get now we got Sleep Tight Evangeline as a title. It doesn't really tell us anything. Well, even if it is Evangeline by Longfellow, or Poe, it's really it's a tight thing. If we're going to do,
I'm interested to try and get ahead of this workload because I'm just looking at the reading list that you've added to just over this conversation, and I find myself moving back to book 3 to go back through Blue Oyster Cult. When we get to Sleep Tight Evangeline, I want to get ahead of the game. So you've correctly predicted Aurorally as a template. You've correctly identified the ring in the book. the template for the Hallmark band, something that nobody else is done. What can we do? What can we do? Yes, but for Cuckoo and Career of Evil, you've already given me my homework for Career of Evil. But what can we do for Evangeline? What, looking ahead, what's the first thing? Well, when we get the book, after I've gone all the way to the back for the acknowledgements, and I've got my fill of the acknowledgements, what do I have to do to understand the structure of the epigraphs?
I mean, well, first, I found those things, but you had the first confirmed by Mrs. Murray, and then you connected the dots between the Browning poems and Rowling's work. So, I mean, you can see there's a two-part thing. I mean, if this method is going to work on Cuckoo, I think you got to go back to Cuckoo first, and then Career and Evangeline. I mean, Demetra said Evangeline is the right pronunciation for that. I'm going to struggle with that, but Dr. Feeney, I'm going to go with Dr. Feeney. If the method's going to work on the three books for which we really don't have a clear grasp of the epigraphs, it's going to involve a spotter and a shooter. Now, if you don't know how spotter and shooters work, if you've got a sniper and he's got a target which is way, 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 that he's got someone with him who is making sure that target is in the frame for the shooter. And that's the easiest work there is. I mean, he basically has to look through a lens and say, there he is, and the shooter has to make sure that it's square and the windage is right, and it has to do all the work and hit the target. Now you can say, well, the sniper doesn't have a shot without the spotter, but but nobody dies if it's just the spotter saying, we got him, there he is. What I'm looking at, the spotter technique is what I've done. It's grunt work. You list the epigraphs, you break them down by the authors that are present. You spot the author that's most frequently referenced and the work of theirs that's most frequently cited. That's all I did to get Aurora Leigh and the Ring of the Book. I mean, the Ring of the Book, there were other things that were possibilities, were strong possibilities. But then when you saw that the frontispiece and most of the things or most the plurality of which were Browning's work, and he had some real things, and then you knew about Aurora Leigh already. Okay, Ring of the Book shot to the top of the list. Forget Merope. We're going with this one. The shooter work is actually a lot more involved and interesting. And you haven't talked about this. This is supposed to be about your post, not about the John's cataloging work that an intelligent third grader could do. Tell us about your experiences with the two Browning's epic poems and really the thrill of discovering the correspondences. I mean, you said it's fairly obvious. Yeah, Nick. It's always obvious. Now people are going to say that. This is you've taken this topic which nobody knew was a thing, and now you've made it. It's already jumped to the point of we've always known that. After you posted this last week, we've always known that she likes Browning epic poems for her things. Do you think that excitement that you feel when you find those correspondences, and just reading your post, I was like, oh yeah, there it is, Tyler Powell, is the same as this cleric. That's, oh my goodness, look at that, Chloe Griffin. I was really thrilled. But to do it, I've had the experience of having, doing the whoa and seeing that. Do you think that excitement is something that Rowling is offering her readers? Sort of as a treasure hunt? Or is she offering it as a point of reflection, in terms of the meaning involved?
So I started reading The Ring in the Book, as you do. You don't pick up a monster like this and just head straight into it. So I went to the Wikipedia article. Not interested so much on the plot, but I wanted the history where Browning was. Now he'd
always the lake man, always the
lake man. So of course, Robert Browning was married to Elizabeth Barrett Browning. They lived together in Italy, in Florence. Elizabeth died, and this really was the first major work that Robert Browning produced after Elizabeth died. He'd moved back to England by this point. So that was in my mind when I was reading, that physically there are correspondences. So I mean, you talk poems of this mass in English in Victorian times. I mean, really, Aurora Leigh and The Ring and the Book stand alone. That's got to that's got to have been in Robert Browning's mind. So as I was reading it, I was conscious, and it's still really fresh in my memory. The Aurora Leigh poem. It does stay with you once you've read it. So it was in my mind as I was reading, and really the first few passages within The Ring and the Book, Browning's description of the ring, description of finding the book, he references his lyric love. So this was almost a letter that he's written to Elizabeth. Now, when he discovered the old yellow book, Elizabeth was still alive. He initially he wanted to do something with this plot device, these old manuscripts that he found, and he tried to get other people to do it. I don't know if you're familiar with that technique, John, but something you feel needs to be done, but you don't have the time because you've got a busy life. You try and push a friend. You try and push a friend into doing it. But
what a caddish thing to do! What a
so
lazy, irresponsible thing to do.
That's
not a true friend, Nick. That's not a true friend.
He had no takers. He tried Tennyson. Tennyson wasn't interested. Of course, he's doing his own epic poetry at this time. Elizabeth has died, and he decides to write it. That you're conscious of differences. I said Aurora Leigh is a novel in poetic form, so it follows a linear, time-based narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's consciously chiastic. I mean, not just discover it; it tells you about it as you're going past the turn. Then the parts of the poem call to each other. They say, "Remember back when," you know, I remembered back when, and it calls to itself. And The Ring and the Book, of course, is very different. Each part really can be taken as entirely discrete. So delighted that John found the asterisk pattern for the chiasmus, because I knew it was important. I knew both in its conversation with Aurora Leigh, because Aurora Leigh is so overtly chiastic. I couldn't believe that Robert Browning would write it in a manner that didn't in some way echo that fashion. But it also called back in many of the themes. And still, as I'm mulling it over, I say there's so many ideas in there that even post writing that article, there are a group of people called the Molinists, who were, as far as I can tell, relatively gentle dissenters from the Catholic Church, in that they were still in the Catholic Church, but they were a stream of thought that was considered anti-church authority. And they're referred to in almost every part, that it isn't the first and last part. So almost every testimony refers to these Molinists, and they are the others. So if somebody is blaspheming, they're acting like a Molinist. You're being a coward now. Don't let the Molinist sway your thought. He's nothing less than a Molinist, always referred to as this sort of obscene, heretical other. That calls very much to Aurora Leigh talking about the French socialists and the French communists, as they were in sort of all but name, throughout Aurora Leigh. These sort of others that are beyond the pale of civilized society. I felt that was calling very much to it. The themes it was talking about. I mean, we've discussed, I think Robert Browning would hate to be considered a feminist. You thought that Elizabeth would probably hate to be considered a feminist as well. But using the modern terms, many of the themes he's talking about, that is the subjugation of women, the unbearable or authority of male dominance, many of those themes come up. And I think most tellingly, and again, this is still something that's sort of pouring out of me as I sort of lay in the bath and think about this poem. Remember when I charted the ring for Aurora Leigh, I said, well, the meaning in the middle and at the brackets and bookend the latch is Elizabeth's passionate belief in the transformative effect of art, particularly poetry, to improve. And she criticizes the socialist ideal of being so concerned with the body. What does it matter? What does that matter if you improve and save the body if you can't save their souls? Well, the first and last chapter of Robert Browning's work, and he sets up this ring that you craft to mimic the ancient original, and then he reprises that at the end. He says, "What's the point of doing this? Why am I doing this? Why all this work? It is to save a soul." As I say, there's so many calls between the two work, and I think Rowling, when she read The Ring in the Book, I think that would have excited her if there was, unless there was a huge gap in time between her reading Aurora Leigh and reading The Ring in the Book. I think that would have excited her, and I think if her injecting that conversation into the Hallmarked Man, I think, was done with the anticipation of exciting us.
Yeah, I agree. That comment that she made twice in the tour to promote Casual Vacancy about the light of God shining from every soul, and that's the whole point of the book.
Yeah,
I think has she ever said that about any other book?
No.
This is what this book is about.
Yeah.
I think she's saying that's what her work is about, and I think she's chosen these books, perhaps the Blue Oyster Cult accepted, that she's chosen the works that are about what it means to be human, and that it has this soul thing. The only thing that she's told us about her religious beliefs is that she believes in the immortal soul, which implies that there's some kind of judgment, at post-mortem, and that's unique. And we got to see that at the Deathly Hallows finish. We see that, all these things. This and the what is it? The morality and mortality to her are conjoined. These epigraphs. There's the joy of discovery, like, oh, I see the correspondences. But then when you get into, what those poets are writing about, what they're doing, to save a soul in art. If I had one argument with what you did, I've only read a very little bit of The Ring in the Book, but it's about the ore part, ORE part, and the refining of gold into the ring and the forge element of it. That's a correspondence between what she does in Hallmarked Man and the silver and everything that happens at the old forge and The Ring in the Book. Even though here it seems to be, you described this beautifully, Nick, in your post about how there's a cycling thing, because you're seeing the story again and again and again from different perspectives that are much like what happens at a blacksmith's or an alchemist in terms of the purification of the metal and it's being shaped and transformed. That Rowling, we don't have a confirmation from her that The Ring in the Book is that book. I think your work as largely serves as that demonstration. But if she is doing this, then it points to the epigraphs as being, not to mention Team Rowling saying, look at those epigraphs more closely, pointers to what she's really about. She's not going to come out again and say it's about the light of God shining from every soul. That's not going to happen again. But I think with the Cupid and Psyche tweet that she did, the Psyche Ascendant, and with the that her major struggle with her beliefs is the God-shaped vacuum that she experiences within her. I don't quite believe that that's true, what she says about not having these beliefs, because her work testifies to something which is pretty strong about what she believes and how she believes it. But anyway, I think the epigraph studies is more than just an obsessive's task. It's looking really for the heart and the meat of what she's about. And why do people love these books so much? What resonates inside every reader when they read her work? The epigraphs are a little point, a little flash, little sparks, like, hey, look at this. We certainly talk about this a lot in those sharding episodes, because there are certain moments where you just do the, wow, we're right at the turn of this chapter set, and there's this epigraph that just explodes at you. But I think that's something we have to do. Every reader has to be encouraged to do. And especially with Sleep Tight Evangeline, I don't think it's going to be the blues band in Cincinnati, Ohio. God bless them. I hope they sell a lot of records before this book comes out. But I hope that it's going to be something like the Psalter or the Longfellow poem, from which we can get a lot of that cardiac intelligence, the heart, where the Holy Spirit, the Lord, lives inside the human person. I think Rowling's much of that. I had one more thing before we go, Nick. My argument was that you didn't lean heavily enough into the feminist side of that book. And just to give you, that this book has been largely neglected, but the feminist readers inside academia have revived it. And there's a book by Anne Brady called Pompilia, a feminist reading of Robert Browning's The Ring and the Book. It's not an easy read, but it's basically her. It's 1988.
Okay, so not so long ago.
No, it's a university press, so it's pretty expensive, but there is a. I didn't know that there's a bust. There's a bust of Pompilia that was carved by a Browning, believe it or not. Just saying. All right. It really. I think I haven't read The Ring in the Book, but reading your piece, reading other things about it, I really do think you're right that it's a love song to his departed wife and what was important to them, and that was, their marriage was not a marriage of, hey, I'm the man, and so you're going to be, cooking meals and cleaning dishes, stuff like that. They shared a vocation.
Yeah.
And if there's a connection between the Brownings and this book, it would be, clearly the anti-erotic love of these partners in their vocation, which had an erotic aspect because they're human beings. But it certainly survived her death, her physical death. Again, Nick, first of all, congratulations on running this piece, doing the hard work, taking the shot and making it happen. It's going to be a landmark thing in Rowling Studies. I think it really, with the Aurora work that you've done, not to mention the Capture the Castle, other things that you're doing on your Rowling reading list. This is really, really first class work. Can you see the jealousy here? I'm turning green here. Doing this. Bad friend that I am by saying, so Nick, go ahead, give us the Blue Oyster Cult, make something out of that. All right,
thank you very much,
what
Sean.
we got coming up? We're on part 8 of our reading. We're always moving towards another Cupid and Psyche episode. doing my reread and close read of Hallmarked Man, I'm really coming to the point that it's the hell portion of the Cupid and Psyche myth, and I'm going to share. We're hoping to get some people on the show that have done a lot of work on this, more than I have, really, to talk about it. So that's it is in the works, folks. And the paid subscribers will be getting a survey soon about the course, the online course, because I want to really make sure that we're doing what you want. You know, I don't want to prepare this whole class and find out it was just John's little thing. All right. There'll be a lot of epigraphs in there, I'm sure. Thank you all out there for listening, and for Nick for editing this thing.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.